This is episode 94 and the solo round.
Welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, the show that empowers you to become the hero of your life's journey. With your host, Bryan Teare.
Hey guys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, episode 94 today, and I'm excited to be sharing a solo episode with you as I wrap up 2017 and look back at everything that happened this year. Before we get into that, a shout out to our sponsor. It's the awesome team at Rooster, the alarm clock app that allows you to wake up to whatever it is you choose, so you can avoid those boring tones that you keep hitting snooze on and instead decide to wake up to voice notes from friends and family, inspiring channels, some news headlines, sports headlines, and so much more, including a channel from yours truly. So I urge you to go check that out, and that is on the Google Play Store or the App Store at Rooster, Alarm, and Audio Treats. Right, on to this week's episode. And as you're listening to this, Taryn and I are in Sri Lanka celebrating our honeymoon. And I'm just feeling really good about the year that has just passed us by, and decided to shoot this solo episode to kind of wrap things up and review everything that went by. So in this episode, I'm going to take you through my personal annual review, including some highlights from my business and the podcast. We're going to go through some stats from the show, some of my personal favorite highlights and episodes that we covered in 2017. Some of the top quotes and lessons that we learned from our amazing guests this year, and also one or two announcements and thank yous at the end. So I hope you guys enjoy this one. I hope you're enjoying your December and that you've got an amazing holiday lined up with friends and family. So without further ado, let's go check out the annual review. All right, welcome back, everybody, and thanks for hanging out with me again as we wrap up 2017. I hope you're feeling in a little celebratory mood. I know I am, and at the time of recording this, and getting really excited. And as I said, Taryn and I are relaxing on honeymoon in Sri Lanka. But as I mentioned, I wanted to run by an annual review for this episode. And each year I write an annual review as a way to reflect on the year that's passed, review successes and failures, and keep myself publicly accountable. There will be a written version of this up on my blog on December 20th, so you can go check that out. But there's 5 questions essentially that I like to answer in my annual review. It's what went well, what needs work, what did I learn, what am I working towards in the new year, and what is my theme for the new year? This last one's really important as it kind of encapsulates everything that you do or take on in the year. Now, if you don't already do so, I highly recommend writing your own annual review, as it really helps you celebrate things that you might have forgotten you'd achieved, or identify ways you can improve and know what to double down on in the upcoming year. So feel free to use this format, but let's get into it. So as I said, I'm going to start off with what went well. And these were some of the big wins in 2017. The first one is my theme for the year was simplify. And I think that I definitely made progress on that this year. I began looking at all areas of my life and asked myself if something was really adding value or not. It's such an important question to ask ourselves. Does this add value? Some of the things that I simplified included my physical environment, like my home and my office, my iPhone, which I now call my dumb phone and not a smartphone. So I got rid of all notifications. There's no apps on my home screen. I keep my phone on Do Not Disturb all day. And this really allows me to get more work done and focus and not get distracted by little buzzes and bells and all that kind of stuff. My website, if you've been on there lately, I simplified that a ton, and I love the sort of clean, minimal look that I've got going on now with some new pictures up there. So that was a big one for me. And then my morning and evening routines, I got some clarity on what it is I actually want to achieve in those periods and what wasn't serving me. And I really developed a routine that I'm really fond of now, and it keeps me focused and straight into my day and kind of bookends the day. The fact is, we can't control what happens in the middle of our day, but we can bookend that day with things that we do control. So that was really great too. And then my social media habits became a lot better in 2017. My diet, I went plant-based, which was a big decision for me, and it's been amazing, which I'll mention later on. And my workout too. I also simplified that. So things really felt a lot simpler in my life, and I firmly believe that simplicity is a prerequisite for true happiness and freedom. So if you are facing a lot of clutter, whether that's physical or mental or emotional, I urge you to have a look at what's not adding value and start getting rid of that. Another big win this year was my work, and continuing the theme of simplicity, I focused more of my time on fewer projects as I no longer needed to generate income from a bunch of smaller jobs. 2017 was the year that I became really location independent, and I now can literally work from wherever it is I choose. If you've been following me for a while, you'll know that this has been a big goal of mine since I left my engineering job 3 years ago, and it feels really good to be at that point. Now, for me, being a digital nomad or location independent doesn't mean that you sit with your laptop on the beach, but it can be just as simple as, if I feel like going to a coffee shop and doing some work, I have the freedom to do that, which is amazing. I was also fortunate enough to work with some amazing mentors this year, especially towards the end of the year, and I have some exciting projects lined up for 2018. Halfway through the year, my primary source of income came to an end, but using the skills and the relationships I've developed along the way, I was able to launch a new offering supporting high-level coaches, and was able to not only replace, but even surpass that income in just 2 months' time. As a result, I enjoyed my most successful month, at least financially, in October, which was a big confidence booster for me. It's so amazing to be able to use things that you've learned and know that you are able to create an income or generate an income on your own without having to go back to a 9-to-5 job. So that was a big win for me. And a big part of my work is obviously this podcast. So I was super proud of the work that I put out this year. I published a new episode every single week of the year, apart from Christmas and New Year, which I'll get to later. I made some amazing friendships. I received emails from people around the world thanking me for the help that I gave them in improving their lives. And I was featured in some big publications like the Huffington Post and the Good Men Project. At the time of writing, the show has close to 50,000 downloads, which I think is pretty awesome. It's obviously, not as big as some of the major podcasts out there, but it makes me feel so good that people have pressed play 50,000 times to some of these episodes. And then I also stepped into a new part of my business this year, which was speaking and landing my first paid speaking gig, which is another area I'm excited to grow in the new year. So we've got Simplify, we've got work. Another big win for me was relationships. And for a long time, I'd been thinking about Jim Rohn's quote about being the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But it wasn't until this year, in 2017, that I really started taking it seriously. I became way more intentional about who I spent my time around and who I didn't, which is really not easy to do. And also established relationships with some inspiring new friends online. To the mentors I've worked this year, and you guys know who you are: Jacob, Michael, Greg, Christina, Jason, Ajit, Bassam, Tom, Craig, Clark, and so many more. Thank you. You will never know the impact that you've had on my journey. And finally, the biggest relationship of all is I got married to the girlfriend from last year's annual review. And as I said, we're on honeymoon as you listen to this. So that's really exciting. I would never have imagined that happened when I was sitting at the beginning of 2017 planning my year. The whole thing happened within 2 weeks. No, we're not pregnant. And it continued the theme of unconventionality in our entire relationship. Then on the personal side, this was one of the biggest goals for the year, and that was to develop a reading habit. And while I didn't hit my target of 24 books for the year, I'm super happy with my total of 15. including a 700-page monster from Tony Robbins. And if you guys are looking to read more, something that I found that helped a ton was reading first thing in the morning, straight after I meditate, for a minimum of 30 minutes. So, before there's any distractions, before things get in the way, just take some time for yourself. I also invested in or participated in 11 coaching programs or courses, investing thousands of dollars in the process. And I don't say this to brag, but just to point out that investing in yourself is the biggest and best investment that you can make with your time, with your money, with your energy, with everything. In fact, most of my money this year went towards personal development, which I'm pretty proud of. Besides online courses, I also worked with my own coaches for the first time. I began speaking at Toastmasters. I learned more about personal finance, and I made learning a part of my daily routine, which Robin Sharma also said is the mark of, the biggest game changer. Then travel was another big win for my year. I was, when I set out the beginning of 2017, it was a kind of a lofty goal of mine to go on another overseas trip, but I didn't know how I would make that happen. And I was fortunate to be able to go on 2 overseas trips this year. First, a work trip to meet up with my mentor Jacob in Spain. Barcelona probably became my new favorite city. And then this honeymoon that I'm on right now in Sri Lanka. And in addition, we also went on a safari up the garden route of South Africa and are taking a road trip in a motorhome or camper van for New Year's, which I'm really looking forward to. And then the final sort of big win from the year is, as I mentioned earlier, I went vegan this year, went plant-based. And I never thought I'd say those words. In fact, just a few months ago, I kind of made a joke to a friend that there's no ways I would ever go vegan. I love my meat too much. But truth be told, this has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. I'd been having a moral dilemma for a while around saying I love animals, but then still eating meat, and saying I'm passionate about the environment. And I started doing a lot more research on this and discovering just how bad it is for the environment, and just how horribly the animals are treated. And so I decided to make the shift, which has been, in all honesty, it's been easy, fun, and downright delicious, which helps being married to a chef. But I felt no worse in the gym or in general. I still have loads of energy. I'm eating a way bigger variety of foods. Yes, I still get my protein, and no animals need to be harmed in the process, tortured, killed, any of that nasty stuff. And in fact, I actually think this might be an area where I focus a bit more attention in the near future, but more on that to come. So just to summarize then, some highlights from 2017. I read 15 books, excluding other book summaries and PDF guides. Published 51 episodes of the Quarter Life Comeback podcast, only taking a break for Christmas. I appeared in 12 new interviews or features, including the Huffington Post and Goodman Project. Had my record month of income since going solo. Worked with more coaching clients than any other previous year. I launched a second business supporting high-level coaches. Participated in 11 coaching programs. Worked with my own coaches. Spoke at my first speaking gig. Traveled to 2 new countries. Got married and went vegan. But as you probably know, things aren't always just sunshine and roses. And there were some things that I fell short on this year. So I like to say what needs work and not what didn't go well. Some of those things included writing. Once again, as I said at the end of 2016, I didn't write as much as I would have liked this year. And I'm not beating myself up about this, because halfway through the year, I did decide to double down on podcasting. But I do still enjoy writing and plan to ramp this up in a big way in 2018. Video was another area where I really wanted to get into, but didn't really get around to it. And this is something that I'm definitely going to be changing in the new year, which I'll mention later when I get to the sort of looking forward section of this annual review. But I'm definitely revising my content strategy and all that good stuff. Coaching was one area where I felt I could have been more consistent. I did work with more clients this year than I have in previous years, but I would like to have had a consistent client roster throughout the year. And maybe this isn't always the case with entrepreneurship or coaching where, you just have the same amount of clients every single month. But I do feel I could have been more proactive in this regard. At times, I also had to focus on bringing in income as fast as possible. And so coaching took a backseat in those instances because I never want to be in a position where I sign on a client because I need the money. When you start getting needy and you need a client more than they need you, that's when you're going to start having sort of a different agenda, and the results won't come as they would if you were just purely there to serve this person. Then some other business systems. The nerd in me would have preferred some more structure and strategy in my business, as well as some more intentional email list growth. Savings goals, while I was on track to hit my financial goals for the year, at times I had to dip into my savings. And I was planning on, saving up for a surprise trip for someone, which I won't mention in case they're listening to this. But it's definitely still on the cards. And, I guess it just adds more fuel to the fire in 2018. And then the final area that I think I could have done a bit better in 2017 was recreation and fun. My year was heavily focused on work, and I would have liked to make more time for hobbies like playing guitar, learning photography, or writing poetry, or just being creative with no agenda, really. So those are my sort of what went well and what needs work part of my annual review. I hope you guys are still with me. I hope this isn't terribly boring for you and that you're getting some ideas of how you can do your own annual review. But now a new section, which I haven't included previously, and that is, what did I learn? So based on these experiences I've had this year and interviewing everyone and the learnings from things I've done this year, these are some of the biggest lessons I've learned, and I'm going to go through the section pretty quickly. Number one is your relationships and your skills will get you where you're trying to go. Number two, instead of stressing about everything you have to get done, focus on your 1 to 3 most important tasks for that day and do the best job you can. Number 3 is, if you have a good idea, pursue it fast or someone else will do it first. Number 4, learning and investing in yourself is the game changer. That comes straight from Robin Sharma. If something is important, this is number 5, if something is important to you, do it first thing in the morning before checking email, messages, or social media. Number 6, our thoughts create our reality, period. Our thoughts create our reality. And number 7, the universe really does have your back. This is something I personally saw a lot this year, and that is that whenever one opportunity falls away, another one, sometimes better, is waiting to show up. So don't give up when things don't go as planned. All right, now probably the favorite or my favorite part of an annual review is, once you've looked back and celebrated and found out what needs work and what you've learned, is looking forward and figuring out what you're working towards in 2018. So for me, this is the time to really dream big and get inspired, not expired. That would be completely different. And I seem to say it every year, but 2017 feels like I laid a great foundation for bigger things to come in 2018. And that's obviously what we want. We want this feeling of consistent progress and growth and development. And whenever we don't feel like that's happening, something's wrong. And we need to kind of evaluate where we kind of went off course. So there's 4 areas for me where I'd like to focus in 2018. The first one is personal brand plus thought leader. For the past 2 years, I've interviewed almost 100 inspiring guests for the Quarter Life Comeback podcast. And now I kind of feel like it's time for me to establish myself as an authority in the personal development space. I'm not sure what that means for the future of this podcast, at least in its current form, but I am still figuring that out. But nevertheless, there may very well be a slight pivot in the near future, including branding of the show, naming, all that good stuff. But keep your eyes peeled. Stay tuned for more updates on that. And then part of establishing more authority would include seeking out more speaking opportunities as well, whether that's on stage, which I'd really love to do, speaking at colleges and companies and that good stuff, to also being a guest on other people's podcasts and virtual summits and just sharing my expertise and thought leadership in that kind of way. The second area that I'm looking to grow in 2018 is video content. Like I mentioned earlier, it's something that I wanted to do this year. But yeah, I'm looking to share my unique perspectives and thoughts on certain topics. While I do love written content and podcasting, obviously, I do think video is where it's at right now, and a big sort of market to tap into, and a way to expand my reach and help more people. This would also include repurposing that video content into a podcast, whether that's this podcast or a new one or a rebrand, because I know some of you just love plugging me into your ears. And on that note, a big thank you if you are one of those people. And in order to still satisfy my love for interviewing other people, I am planning on hosting an online event, bringing together a group of amazing experts as well. So stay tuned for more news on that. The third area is coaching. 2017, I really started taking myself seriously and educating myself as a coach. I mentioned doing courses and programs and working with coaches myself. And I'm looking to leverage that in 2018. I've invested the time, energy, and money learning from some of the best, and now it's time for me to make an impact for myself. And the final area is writing. As I mentioned above, this is another area that kind of fell short, but I'm planning on ramping that up in 2018. And this includes both writing for big publications, but also, perhaps more importantly, is turning all the content I've created on this podcast into the Quarter Life Comeback book. I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to be a really good challenge. I feel like I need a challenge in my business. And I'm excited at the prospect of having my name on the cover of a book. And as I said, spreading my message and all this content to more people. And then we get to the final part of the annual review, and that is the theme. So as I mentioned, it's helpful to have a theme to kind of encapsulate everything you're working towards in the new year and be able to ask yourself, does this contribute to that theme? Does this add value? But looking back, just quickly, I'm satisfied with my progress on the theme of simplicity for 2017. As I mentioned, I created personal systems for different areas of my life, which I feel good about. I started surrounding myself with inspiring people and investing more into my own learning. And perhaps most importantly, I was able to focus more of my energy on fewer things. In 2018, my theme for the year is Pro. As I mentioned above, it's time to put myself on the map and expand my personal brand in order to make a bigger impact and serve more people. And this includes coaching, speaking, writing, video, and a possible pivot in who and how I serve. I'd love for you to shoot me a tweet on social media and let me know what your theme is going to be for 2018. All right, so now to move on with this episode, I mentioned the annual review. And just some quick stats again. Over the past 12 months, I've received 28,857 downloads, and that's at time of recording in November. And as I said, published 51 episodes, not missing a week except for Christmas. So I'm really excited about that. Then I wanted to quickly move on and touch on some of my favorite highlights or episodes from the show over the course of 2017. I'll put a link to them in the show notes. First of all, we had Ryan Robinson on how to start a side gig. Ryan is a really good friend of mine online. So much good content on his own podcast. But I highly recommend you check that one out. If I had to tie this to kind of a lesson, which actually I'm going to get to in the next section of this episode, but don't start things cold turkey, kind of jump ship and just do things from the beginning. Start something on the side if you have an idea and build it up to a point where it's making income that you can't quit your job. And that episode will explain exactly how to do that. Then I had the amazing Tom Asacker on, I think it was episode 54. I'll put that in the show notes. But Tom said, he explained how your passion isn't out there, it's inside, it's in here. So I recommend you go check that one out if you've tried to figure out your passion or your purpose. We had Paul Sohn, who explained how to find your purpose sweet spot as the combination of 4 different things. So I highly recommend, again, you go check that one out. Matt Diavella, a really good buddy of mine, and the man behind the camera and the genius of the minimalism film, spoke to us about how to get out of debt, which he knows all too well about. J. Norman Baldwin had a really interesting concept of, there's this push towards leadership and becoming a leader in today's society. But he said that not everyone is destined for that, and that's okay. And he explained how to become a follower and how to become a good follower and leading at following, which I thought was a really unique concept. And then finally, as you heard just last week, Bassam Tarazi, probably my favorite episode and interview on this entire show, let alone in 2017. And he spoke about how to live a life of exploration and adventure. It was amazing to get to speak to Bassam, and I'm super glad to be able to call him a friend today. Next up, I want to move on to some of my top favorite quotes and lessons from this show over the course of 2017. Mark Shapiro, right near the beginning of the year, he said, "We get to choose who we want to be." All right, so let that one sink in. No one can dictate who we are. Your circumstances don't determine your situation. We get to choose what we're working towards and who we are. The next one is one that I mentioned in the speech I did at my high school. And that is, if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. So as Mark said, we get to choose who we want to be. The first part of that is coming up with a vision, a compelling thing to pull us forward, especially when those times get tough. And if you don't have a vision, you're just going to kind of wander around aimlessly. So if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. Doug Stewart, my good buddy, I had him on for a repeat episode, and he said that you don't have to know the end to start. This is probably by far the biggest lesson that I've had from all the guests I've interviewed, and that is just get started. Just take that first step, and if you're struggling to find what that is, think of the very smallest thing you can do to move you towards that vision we spoke about in the second quote. So you don't have to know the end to start. Ryan Robinson, as I mentioned in the side gig episode, he said that you don't try to find or follow your passion. And this was another thing that a couple of guests echoed, and a big lesson that I've kind of cemented or tattooed in my brain. And that is that you can't find your passion. And I'll speak about that in the next quote too. But it's something that you create. It's not something that's just out there and, you pluck it out of the sky. Which ties into the next quote from Tom Asacker, and that is that your passion isn't out there, it's in you. So experiment with things that interest you, things that interest you, things you're good at, and things that people need. Experiment with things at the nexus point of those three things, and you'll start getting good at some things, and those become things that you are passionate about. It doesn't work the other way around. And finally, Josh Hainem said in his interview, "Success is more about habits than skills or luck." All right, so you can outperform someone who's maybe more talented than you any day of the week. It's all about your habits and how hard you're willing to work to get to your goals. So guys, that is pretty much what I wanted to cover in this episode. A look back at the year, a look back at some of my favorite moments, and just a quick announcement that I will be taking Christmas and New Year off. So next week and the week after, there will be no episode. But I urge you to go and enjoy time with friends, maybe journal on some of these exercises and questions that we've featured in the show. And we will be back in your earbuds in 2018. It's been an amazing year. James Clear, one of my sort of role models online, he said in one of his previous reviews, there aren't many jobs where you can work on what you want, impact people in a positive way, and live a good lifestyle all at the same time. And I am so lucky to have one of those jobs. In fact, I don't even call this a job. But if you've listened, downloaded, shared, played, liked, tweeted, or otherwise consumed any of my content this year, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support means more to me than you will ever know. To all the guests that I've interviewed, I want to thank you for putting together this project of mine. This was, a very much a passion project. It still is. And without you, there would be no show. Thank you for bringing the expertise, the stories, the knowledge, the wisdom to these episodes. And I'm so grateful to be able to call you guys friends. To everyone who's listened, thank you so much. You're the reason I make this show. When I set out, I wanted to be able to ask these people questions myself, but at the same time, help other people who were a couple of steps behind me on a similar path. To everyone who has subscribed, thank you so much. You took that one step further from just listening. If you haven't subscribed, please go and do so at quarterlifecomeback.com. I share some good stuff and will continue to in the new year, even more good stuff that I don't share anywhere else. And then to all the mentors that, like I mentioned earlier, who've helped me along the way. There were times where I felt like quitting and just giving up this podcast, times where I didn't really know what to do or where to go, and you kept me on track, whether that was directly via conversation or indirectly by the work that you are putting out online. I thank you so, so much. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. There's obviously no big takeaway besides the quotes and lessons that I mentioned. If you did, please go and share it with your friends on social media and shoot me a tweet at Bryan Teare to let me know not your big takeaway, but your theme for 2018. I'd love to hear it and be able to support in any way possible. Speaking of support, if you would like someone to guide you in achieving all of your goals in 2018, shoot me an email or otherwise, get hold of me via social media. And we will walk together side by side for the entire 2018. And I won't say too much about that. But if that is something you're looking for support with, I would love to guide you through that journey. So hit me up and we will get in touch and schedule a call personally, one-on-one with me via Skype. And we'll see where you're at and how I can help. You can get the resources and links I mentioned in this episode, as always, at bryanteare.com/094. And I just wanted to say thank you so, so much again for being here. I appreciate you more than you know. Signing out from Sri Lanka on honeymoon, wishing you and your best a happy Christmas and a merry... I just got that completely wrong. A Merry, Merry Christmas if you celebrate. If you don't, have a good holiday and a Happy New Year. And I will see you fresh in 2018. Till next time, guys, keep creating your quarter life comeback.